to Bucklesberry Lemonade, the podcast, where truth hides behind the veil and some voices refuse to be silenced. Tonight, we peer into one of the most unsettling cases to ever slip through the cracks of California's sun-soaked streets. This is the story of Dorothy Jane Scott, a single mother, a quiet office worker, and the recipient of terrifying phone calls that may have ended in her disappearance. It's 1980 in Anaheim, California. Dorothy, she's 32 years old, working as a secretary for a local head shop and a psychedelic bookstore. She's dependable, reserved, church-going, her life focused on her job and her 4-year-old son, Sean. But for months, she's been getting phone calls. They're strange, menacing. A man's voice. Sometimes he's sweet, and other times seething with rage. Sometimes he would describe what she was wearing that day. Other times he threatened to cut her into pieces. She told her family. She told co-workers. She even considered buying a gun. But no one, not even Dorothy, knew who the caller was. May 28th, 1980, Dorothy attends an emergency staff meeting. A co-worker, Conrad Bostrom, is sick. He needs to go to the ER. Dorothy offers to drive him and another colleague. At the hospital, everything seems fine. Bostrom is treated for a spider bite. And around 11 p.m., the group is discharged. Dorothy says she'll pull the car around, and she walks alone into the parking lot. A white 1973 Toyota station wagon. Minutes later, her co-workers see her car tearing out of the parking lot, lights blazing. But she never came home. The next morning, Dorothy's parents report her missing. Hours later, they received a phone call. The calls, they don't stop for weeks, months, years. Always the same voice. Police tried tracing the calls, but they always came when Dorothy's mother was home alone, late at night, and they always ended too fast to track the call. 4 years later, August 1984, a construction crew finds charred human remains off Santa Ana Canyon Road, partially buried beneath a dog skeleton. A turquoise ring, a watch was also found. But the dental records, they confirmed it was Dorothy Jane Scott. Strangely enough, that watch that was found, well, it had stopped at 12:30 a.m. on May 29th, 1980, the very day that Dorothy vanished. But there were no signs of trauma, no suspect, and the cause of death, well, that was undetermined. Even after the discovery, those phone calls continued. So who was the man on the phone? Some believe it was a former co-worker obsessed with Dorothy. Others point to a man with a violent past, with claims that he had visited the store. But the strongest theory? Well, that someone was close, someone she knew, maybe even someone in the office. A man obsessed, watching, following, waiting. But yet, After more than 40 years, her case remains unsolved. Dorothy Jane Scott was a mother, a daughter, a friend. She didn't run with danger. It came for her quietly, repeatedly, until it claimed her. And maybe, somewhere in the static of a late night phone call, the truth still lingers. It was a quiet Wednesday morning in Kinston, North Carolina, February 28th, 1996. 50-year-old Tommy Lee Walters had just stepped out of his home on Heritage Street. He wore a brown coat over a plaid shirt, brown pants, white shoes. Outside his car, a 1979 Chrysler station wagon, he waited patiently. It was faded black, brown paint, North Carolina tag, FRA 1921. Tommy got in, started the engine, and just like that, vanished. That's the last confirmed sighting of Thomas Lee Walters. His family, they'd said he had been struggling in the days before, quiet, withdrawn, possibly depressed. But no one suspected he'd simply disappear. He left no note, took no luggage, and didn't tell a soul where he was headed. His car, it's never been found. No trace on back roads, nothing on logging trails, nothing by the ponds, the rivers, no hospital registries. It was as if man and machine dissolved into the Carolina night.
Tommy wasn't just any man. He walked with a steel rod in one leg, an old injury from years past. Not the kind of person who could wander far on foot. That made his sudden disappearance all the more baffling. To those who knew Mr. Tommy, he wasn't the type to just up and leave without a word. Some believed he might have gone off to clear his mind. Others whispered darker theories about things that might have happened that night behind closed doors or on quiet country roads. What really happened to Tommy Lee Walters after all these years? The questions haven't faded, they've only grown louder.
Over the years, the case has gone cold, but it's not forgotten. No dentals, no fingerprints, no DNA on file that we know of. Not even a lead. Just one man and a station wagon that rolled into the unknown. And it's time for answers.
If you know anything about the disappearance of Tommy Lee Walters, contact the Kinston Public Safety Department at 252 939 3160 because somewhere out there, the road he took still waits.
Mary Shotwell Little was a 25-year-old newlywed, working as a secretary at Citizens and Southern Bank in Atlanta. Pretty, polite, and proper. But in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Mary's composure, well, it began to fray. Friends and co-workers noticed her taking odd, hushed phone calls at work. "I don't hold anything against you," she was heard saying. "You can come over to my house any time you want, but I can't come over there." She was heard emphasizing over and over that she was a married woman. She had also started receiving 5 red roses from some secret admirer. She even went so far as to tell her friends she had something important to tell them, something she never got the chance to say. Suddenly, this quiet newlywed who once drove home without a thought was now afraid to drive home alone. That evening, Mary had dinner with a coworker at Lenox Square Shopping Center. Afterwards, she walked to her car and was never seen again. Her 1965 Mercury Comet, well, it was missing until the next day. It turned back up in the same parking lot. Inside that vehicle were bloodstains on the seat, undergarments neatly folded in the back seat, the same ones that Mary had bought the night she'd vanished. Also strange, the odometer showed the car had 40 miles unaccounted for. Yet, somehow it didn't get ticketed overnight in that parking lot, suggesting maybe that car had been somewhere else. Another strange detail, a stocking was found in the car, neatly cut, but Mary was gone. Strangely enough, her gas card was used in her hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. She was also seen in Raleigh. A few days later, a woman matching Mary's description was reportedly seen with bruises, in need of help, and accompanied by unsettling male figures. But just like that, that trail turned cold. And the rumors, well, they flew. Abduction, secret lovers, even Cold War spies. But a darker theory also surfaced that Mary's disappearance was tied to a sex scandal at Citizens and Southern Bank itself. Whispers described prostitution on the bank premises and even lesbian harassment. The FBI was reportedly called in to investigate these explosive claims, and Mary was said to have known about it, but just as quickly as the rumors appeared, they vanished. No charges were ever filed, and the truth of the scandal and Mary's connection to it all, well, that's remained shrouded in doubt. Nobody, no suspect, no motive. To this day, Mary Shotwell Little remains Atlanta's most unsettling missing persons case. A true Southern mystery, forever unsolved, with vital evidence mysteriously vanishing over time.
You know Diane Shields. She was the kind of woman you'd notice. A pretty little thing. She was a secretary from Gunnersville, Alabama. She had a spark about her. Sweet, driven, and just as friendly as she can be to just about everyone she met. But sometimes being in the wrong place at the wrong time can change everything. And do you know, after Mary Shotwell Little vanished from Atlanta in 1965, Diane, oddly enough, was transferred into Mary's exact position at Citizen and Southern Bank. Same desk, same department. You know, she even lived with some of Mary's former roommates for a while in Buckhead before moving to College Park to live with her sister. Eventually, she left the bank and started a new job as a receptionist downtown. Then came May 19th, 1967. Diane left for work in her blue and white Chevy Impala and simply disappeared. That night, East Point police, they found her car parked near a laundromat on Sylvan Road. The keys were still in the ignition. There was blood dripping from the back bumper. And inside the trunk, a grim discovery. Diane's body had been crammed in upside down, wedged between a spare tire and a cardboard box. The contents of that box: a copy of Betty Crocker's New Dinner for Two. Diane had been planning to marry in July. She hadn't been robbed. Her diamond engagement ring was still on her hand. She hadn't been sexually assaulted either, but someone had forced a scarf and a piece of paper down her throat as if to silence her. It didn't take long for whispers to start. Clint Chafin, superintendent of Atlanta detectives, told East Point officers
That sounds like our Mary Shotwell Little case.
both had worked at the same bank. Both had received anonymous roses. Both had disappeared under mysterious, controlled circumstances. And both women's deaths, will they remain unsolved. Mary's former roommates were terrified. Two of them called the FBI's Bob Ponder and begged to sleep at his house the weekend after Diane's death. They even suspected one of their own co-workers, though they couldn't explain why. But that woman, she was just as afraid as the rest. Ponder didn't believe the cases were connected. On his recommendation, the FBI never got involved in Diane's murder. But many officers still do believe Melvin Banks, East Point's lead detective on the Shields case, later said they're connected, no question. He believes someone tied to the internal investigation at C&S Bank was behind it, but with no hard leads and little cooperation. The case went cold. Even worse, like Mary's case, Diane's case file eventually vanished. No evidence, no suspect, no justice. Just two women gone from the streets of Atlanta, linked by fear, by roses, and by the silence that followed.
Welcome to another edition of Mucklesberry Lemonade, the podcast. Tonight, we walk the dusty roads and fog-laced valleys of forgotten crimes. Tonight, we travel west, deep into the misty ravines of Trinity County and the sun-baked opulence of Palm Springs. Two lives, separated by a decade and hundreds of miles, but yet connected by the cold silence left behind. These are the stories of Kay Adams and the Friendly Family. August 1987, Trinity County, California. It's remote, wild, a place where the redwoods whisper secrets that no one else hears. Our story centers on Kay Josephine Medine, a school teacher known to her friends and students simply as Kay Adams. Kay Adams was a school teacher, 56 years old, kind, quiet, Students remember her warm smile and careful words. But one warm August day, Kay, she simply vanished. Her home showed no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no note, just gone. Now, in a place where everyone knows everyone, you would imagine word did indeed spread fast. Volunteers searched wooded trails and nearby rivers. Deputies combed through every logging road and hunting shack. But Kay had disappeared without a trace. Then, months later, an envelope. Inside were bone fragments. Human. No note, no return address. Just coordinates scrawled on a piece of notebook paper. Those coordinates led investigators to a remote site 45 miles away. More remains were found buried in shallow earth. Some were charred, some were intact. But they didn't scream of violence. They whispered of something very strange. Then in 1993, 6 years after Kay's disappearance, a human skull washed ashore at Trinidad Hit Beach, nearly 100 miles from Kay's home. It was stored and forgotten. Only recently, with DNA testing, was that skull confirmed to be Kay Adams. So what happened to Kay? Some say it was an obsessed admirer. Others whisper of a local recluse with violent tendencies. Long gone now, but some theories drift into the surreal. One former neighbor swears she saw strange lights above Kay's home days before she vanished. Others mention whispers about a man in camouflage seen near her property just a week prior to her disappearance. Coincidence? Delusion? Or something more? To this day, no one knows who mailed the remains, or why, or how her skull made it to a beach over 100 miles from her home. Kay Adams. She's never had justice, but in the stillness of Trinity County's pine-covered hills, her story still lingers like a fog that is never quite lifted.
Now we head south to the sweltering glamour of Palm Springs, California. It was December 1978. Edward and Sophia Friendly, wealthy, private San Francisco socialites, had retreated to their Palm Springs home for the season. With them was their devoted housekeeper, Frances Williams. On the 29th of December, silence fell over the estate. Neighbors had become concerned. No one had seen the Friendlies or Frances for days. A welfare check revealed the horror that was inside. Edward, Sophia, and Frances all were deceased, brutally murdered, their bodies discovered in various states of decay. The scene showed no forced entry, no signs of theft. Whoever had done this knew the layout or had been let in. Detectives unearthed layers of secrets. Sophia's estranged son, Edward Hutton, he had motive. The estate, the money, the feud. But he had an alibi. Then, a stranger, Andreas Christensen, a Danish man, ex-military with a shady past. He admitted to dumping a 45 caliber gun in the desert. The friendlies had been killed with a 45. But there was no physical evidence tying him to the crime. No fingerprints, no DNA, no confession, just whispers and theories. And then there were the oddities. A neighbor, they reported seeing Sophia talking to a man in priest robes just days before the killings. No clergy matched the description. No churches nearby knew him. Frances, the housekeeper, had reportedly mentioned to a friend that she'd been hearing voices in the walls. And it gets stranger. One police report, buried deep in the file, mentioned symbols found etched under the friendlies' bed frames. Not Latin, not Hebrew. It was something else. The report was later retracted, explained away as vandalism, but former officers say they were told to drop it. No one was ever arrested. No one has ever been charged. To this day, the murders of the Friendly family remain unsolved. And in the golden light of Palm Springs, shadows still lurk behind stucco walls. Two lives, two mysteries. One vanished in the misty woods of the north, the other silenced in the desert stillness of the south. California keeps its secrets well, but the wind still whispers. Until next time, keep your lantern lit and stay curious.
Diane Marie Webb, who was born Diane Marie White, she was only 17 when she made a life-altering choice. She decided to stay behind in California with her 16-year-old boyfriend, Benny Milton Webb, while her family moved to Arizona in March of 1959. Diane, young and in love, well, she planned to marry Benny despite her father's disapproval. And by May of 1959, they were indeed husband and wife. However, not long after, Diane vanished without a trace. And the questions that surround her disappearance, well, they've only deepened over the decades. For months after her marriage, Diane kept in touch with her family through letters. Her last known correspondence was sent on August the 22nd, 1959. She sent that letter to her younger sister. It contained a gift of hand-crocheted handkerchiefs. Just a seemingly ordinary gift that would take on an eerie significance. After that, well, the letters, they stopped. Then, oddly enough, in 1960, Benny wrote a letter to Diane's family asking if she was with them. This shocked Diane's parents. After all, they had assumed she was still with Benny. So they pressed Benny for details. He claimed he hadn't seen Diane in a long time. He stated he'd given her $100 and put her on a bus back home to her family. He later alleged that she had wrote him just once, revealing she had suffered a miscarriage, and after that, she was never heard from again. Desperate for answers, Diane's father, he traveled to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, where Benny's family lived. But instead of help, he was met with hostility. Now, some reports Well, they claim it was Benny's uncle. Then other reports say it was Benny's brother. But either way, somebody in Benny's family was indeed the local police chief, and he allegedly threatened Diane's father, forcing him to leave town. And it just gets stranger. You see, to this day, Benny Webb refuses to cooperate with authorities. And despite the existence of a marriage certificate, he now denies ever being married to Diane at all. Well, at his age, what does he truly remember? But more than that, why has he remained silent for so long? A chilling twist came in 1967. Skeletal remains were found in the Catalina Mountains of Arizona. Now, investigators, they initially believed they did in fact belong to Diane Webb, and her passing was ruled a suicide. That's an explanation that her family strongly rejected. Her mother felt so strongly about it that she refused to accept the remains. She insisted they did not belong to her daughter. Time passed, and in 2013, DNA testing did indeed prove her instincts to be correct. The bones, they weren't Diane's. This discovery only deepened the mystery. If those bones didn't belong to Diane, then where is she? And now let's add another layer of strangeness. Some have noted that in the late 1950s, in Truth or Consequences, well, this was also home to David Parker Ray, the infamous toy box killer, who would become known as one of America's most sadistic criminals. Now, while there's no evidence linking Ray to Diane's disappearance, the fact that a known predator was operating in the same small town during the same era has led some to speculate. Still, any connection remains purely conjecture. If Diane were alive today, she'd be in her early 80s. Her parents have since passed, but her siblings continue their search. They refuse to let Diane's memory fade. Her sister still holds on to the marriage certificate that Benny now denies, and she fondly recalls Diane's violet-hued gray eyes, her freckled nose, and the way she laughed. So what really happened to Diane Webb? Was she a victim of foul play, possibly at the hands of someone she trusted? Did she try to start a new life elsewhere, only to meet with an unknown fate? And why did Benny, who once claimed to love her, just stop cooperating entirely? Well over 60 years later, Diane's disappearance, it remains one of Arizona's longest running unsolved missing persons cases. One thing is for certain, her family still wants and deserves answers, and they refuse to give up the search. As Halloween night fell over Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1953, the neighborhood of Rossville Avenue was cloaked in jack-o'-lantern glow and distant laughter. But inside one modest home, something sinister was waiting. 60-year-old Myrtle Morgan had just settled in for the evening, and at 7:05 p.m., she placed a call to a friend. The two chatted briefly until Myrtle paused.
Wait a minute. I heard a noise. I think I think it's Buster's dirty faced cat.
Buster was her son in law, Price Stevens. He and Myrtle's daughter, Norma, lived upstairs. That night, they'd taken a trip to the roller rink with Price's little sister and a friend in tow. Myrtle believed the house was empty, but it wasn't. She set the phone down, and that was the last time anyone ever heard Myrtle's voice again. Her friend stayed on the line, but Myrtle never came back. All she heard was a door creaking open, then
Myrtle.
silence.
Myrtle.
Then, at 7:22 p.m., police were called. As officers arrived, so did Price, just returning from dinner. The front door was locked from the inside, so Price climbed through a window and let the officers in. Together, they stepped inside. As they made their way down the hallway, the first room on the left, that was Myrtle's bedroom. An overturned chair, a phone off the hook, a soft ring still echoing. Price reached down and picked the phone up.
Is she okay? What happened?
Uh, I don't know. We're still looking. They entered the kitchen. Beneath a neatly folded quilt, Myrtle lay deceased, face up, silent, still. Her clothes were torn. Her face had been destroyed, nose shattered, her jaw broken, her eye socket crushed. The final blow was to the back of her head. That blow took her life. But one wound didn't make any sense. It was a clean hole through her upper jaw, the size of a .32 caliber bullet. But no bullet was ever found, and there was no exit wound. Investigators believe the killer had entered just minutes before Myrtle picked up the phone. They bolted the door behind them. Perhaps Myrtle heard them. Perhaps there was a noise that she had mentioned. They followed her into the kitchen and unleashed hell. Then they escaped through a broken window at the back of the house. But the killer left more than chaos. They left confusion and a trail that vanished into the night. By the time the coroner arrived, the crime scene was ruined. After all, it was Halloween. Curious neighbors had swarmed the house, and by 8 p.m., over 100 people had wandered inside, trampling footprints, disturbing furniture, contaminating any clues. A ransacked dresser was found in Myrtle's room, but no one knew what had been taken. Taken by the killer? A curious onlooker just looking for a souvenir? Who knows? Myrtle's husband, George Morgan, was a disabled World War I veteran, and he had lived in a veteran hospital for years. Myrtle, she was getting by on his military pension. She had no known enemies, no debts, no hidden secrets that anyone could uncover. Everyone was questioned, family, neighbors, even known prowlers. But no arrests were ever made. Myrtle was laid to rest in Greenwood Cemetery. Her husband passed away in 1972. Her children, Norma and Jarvis, well, they've also since died. No one's left to demand answers. No one left to name a suspect. Just a phone call, a creaking door, and a mystery that still haunts Chattanooga to this day. The phone line went dead, and Myrtle just like that.